What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, and this is the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022. And in this video, we're going to be going over the top 5 best things and then discussing the top 5 worst things about the device. Now, in general, I think this phone is a really good value for what it is, so the top 5 worst things about it certainly are a bit nitpicking, but at the same time, I do think they are things that you will want to know about prior to getting the phone, so that there aren't any potential surprises when you do end up getting it. But with all that said, let's start by going over the top 5 best things about the device. Now, coming in at number 1 definitely has to be the display. Now, with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we have a very large 6.8-inch display. Now, the display itself features IPS LCD technology, and it also features a 90 Hz refresh rate. So with that faster refresh rate, when you're navigating around everything on the phone, things are going to appear a lot smoother here. So unlike other devices that typically have a 60 Hz refresh rate, it is a bit faster here at 90, which again makes the device feel more premium. Now, in addition to that, the display is 1080p, which is great to see on a more affordable device like this one. It features a PPI of 396. We're getting a 20.5:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but taller form factor here, which really does make the phone ideal for social media and browsing the web, for example. And the phone does feature an 84.6% screen to body ratio. So in general, pretty small bezels all throughout. Now, the bottom bezel is a little bit thicker than the others, but at the same time, the phone still does have a really modern, good look to it. Now, in addition to the display having all those great specifications, it's really bright, and colors are great as well. And in general, for other devices that I've used lately in this price range, this phone definitely has one of the best displays I've seen. Now, you probably already noticed it by looking at the phone in the video, but colors are really good here. So again, I'm really happy with the display that we're getting with the Moto G Stylus 2022, and for a budget device, it definitely impresses me. Now, the second best thing about the Moto G Stylus 2022 definitely has to be that it has a 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, this probably is pretty self-explanatory as to the benefits of having a headphone jack, but that is something that is harder and harder to find nowadays with smartphones. And especially with many of the higher-end devices like the latest iPhones that are out, and also the Galaxy S22 from Samsung, those devices do not have a headphone jack at all. So certainly going for a phone like this one, you're going to be giving up quite a few features that you'd be getting typically with a higher end phone, but at the same time, at least you are able to still use your traditional wired headphones. Now, the third best thing about the G Stylus 2022 definitely has to be the cameras that we are getting here. So the front camera on the device is a 16 megapixel camera, and it is situated in a hole punch. Now, I definitely prefer the hole punch form factor here compared to having a water drop notch, so that's certainly really good. But when it comes to the other cameras on the device, we're also getting a variety of different features. So we're getting a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera that can take images at up to 118 degrees, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera that gives us portrait mode. And we also have portrait mode with the front camera too. Now, what's especially interesting is that even though this device has a triple camera setup, we actually also gain the functionality of a macro camera, which is actually built into the ultra wide camera. So unlike many other phones that typically have a dedicated ultra wide camera and a dedicated macro camera, and if you're not aware, the macro camera specializes in close-up images, but essentially they've combined those two functionalities into the ultra wide camera, which is pretty interesting. So I'm definitely glad that we have a variety of different cameras here with the device, with each of them serving its own purpose. Now, my fourth favorite thing about the Moto G Stylus 2022 definitely has to be the stylus. Now, this time around, the stylus did get a couple more changes, but essentially it features a pop-out, pop-in design. So once you pop the stylus out, you can then use it to navigate around the phone. You can also go over to the pop-out here on the side and access some quick toggles. You can also customize this as well. And in the Google Play Store, there are a variety of different stylus optimized applications that you can download from a variety of different developers, and you can add those in here as well. But if you want to, you can simply create a new note, and then you can begin writing. So there we go, Moto G Stylus. You can also draw if you want to. So there's a bunch of different tasks that you can do with the stylus. But what's even better about the stylus this time around is that you don't have to put it in the phone any particular way, which makes it even easier to use. And another thing I like about the stylus too on this device is that if you don't plan on really using it a whole lot, it's not really inconvenient either to just have in general, because it stows away nice and neatly at the bottom of the device, and it really doesn't take up any extra space or make the phone any thicker, so there's really no downsides to having the stylus. And I really feel like the stylus is certainly not a gimmicky feature either. Unlike many other features that you tend to see on smartphones that you probably will never use, the stylus really does have a genuine purpose and practicality to it. Now there's many things I like about this phone, but coming in at number 5, definitely has to be that we're getting a lot of internal storage. So with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we're getting 128 gigabytes of internal storage, and we're also getting microSD card expansion. So if you happen to want to offload photos and videos, for example, you can always add in a microSD card into the phone to make that happen. But at least just in the phone itself, we already have a lot of storage as it is at 128 gigabytes. So you're gonna be able to download a bunch of different apps, download videos, music, all that stuff, and most likely it won't really make much of a dent in the actual storage itself. So now that we've gone over my top 5 favorite things about the Moto G Stylus 2022, let's now go over my top 5 least favorite things about the phone. And starting off is that we do not have 5G connectivity with the device. Now, about 6 months ago, Motorola did release the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G, which is a completely different phone from the Moto G Stylus 2021. So I really wasn't sure when there were rumors coming up that the Moto G Stylus 2022 would be launching as to whether or not it would actually have 5G connectivity, but unfortunately, this phone only connects to 4G LTE. So if you do want to buy a phone that connects to 5G, then unfortunately, you can't do that here with the Moto G Stylus 2022. And that's especially disappointing because as network technologies continue to improve as time goes on, 5G is clearly the future. So having a phone that only connects to 4G is certainly not the biggest deal ever, like in the sense that the phone becomes useless, but you're definitely not going to be getting quite as much longevity out of it compared to if it did support 5G. So just something to keep in mind there. And I'm sure as well that at some point in 2022, there probably will be a Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 model, but most likely it will be more expensive than this device. The second least favorite thing about this phone is the processor that we are getting here. Now the device features the MediaTek Helio G88 processor. Now that actual processor isn't necessarily that bad, and in general, this phone runs nice and smoothly. So it's really not a big deal, but at the same time, it is decently slower than the Qualcomm processor that we got with last year's Moto G Stylus 2021. So it is a bit disappointing to see the processor in this phone being a bit of a step back, but I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test, and you can see here the scores from that test. So what I recommend doing is running this test in your current phone, and then compare your scores to these scores to get a better idea of whether or not the Moto G Stylus 2022 is even going to be a performance upgrade for you. So again, this device is not necessarily a slow phone, but it is slower than last year's model, so it's a bit unusual to see a device essentially being downgraded in some aspects from one generation to another. Now my third least favorite thing about the Moto G Stylus 2022 is that there is no 4K video recording. So video recording with the front and rear cameras does max out at 1080p, which at least it can take 1080p video, so that's certainly good, and it is usable, and the video quality is at least decent with the phone. But nowadays, 4K video is something that is kind of a standard for most TVs. So if you do want to record a video and put it up on your TV, and you can only record video at up to 1080p, then you're really not even getting the most out of your TV because you're not able to play video from your phone at the max resolution. So in general, I would have wished that this phone had 4K video support, especially since previous Moto G Stylus devices did. And if you're like me, having purchased a 4K TV in the past and wanting to play 4K video content on it, it certainly is disappointing that I can't take video with my phone and then put that video on the TV in the full resolution that I possibly could. Now for certain people out there, that's not even a big deal. And if you are someone that just likes to take video and just keep it on your phone and not do much else with it, then in some ways, not taking 4K video has its advantages because 4K video obviously does take up a bit more storage compared to 1080p video. Now, my fourth least favorite thing about the Moto G Stylus 2022 is that there is no wireless charging. Now, considering that this phone does have a plastic back, including wireless charging really wouldn't be that difficult, but they've chosen not to do it. And of course, having wireless charging with a lower end device like this one is not too common, but at the same time, I have seen at least a decent amount of phones that do give us wireless charging in this price range, such as the blue G91 Max, for example. And if that phone can do it, and it's a cheaper phone than this phone, then I really don't see why Motorola couldn't have included it here. And I can't imagine it really costs that much extra to include. Now, another feature that's missing as well, and this concludes the fifth least favorite thing about the phone, and that is that there's no NFC. Now, this is probably one of the more frustrating omissions that the phone doesn't have, although it is pretty common for lower end Android devices to not have NFC, but again, we're in 2022 at this point. So not having NFC is more of an inconvenience now than ever before. And I definitely prefer to make mobile contactless payments if I'm using a device that supports it, whether it's an Android phone that has Samsung Pay or Google Pay on it, or if it's an iPhone with Apple Pay. That's definitely my preferred method to pay for things. So when I end up using devices that don't have support for NFC, I'm really not a big fan of it, for obvious reasons. But this concludes my video showing you the 5 best and worst things about the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022. Again, in general, I think this is a very good phone, but those 5 least favorite things about it, I definitely think are things you would want to know about prior to getting the device. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one.